go out front tonight to Dan Eberhart. He is a longtime Republican donor, and you know, you've seen him on this program many times as we've been covering what's been happening in the party here over the past few months. Abby Phillip also with me. So, Abby, you know, these charges from Democrats that Manu just detailed are incredibly dramatic and incredibly serious. I mean, is Nancy Pelosi actually saying that she thinks a Republican member of Congress would shoot somebody?
Well, you know, part of the problem for Republicans is that they do have members who have a documented history of endorsing violence against Democratic members, and specifically Pelosi. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as our own K-File has reported, liked comments on social media that said that it would be easier for her to be, you know, shot in the head, things like that. So this is not something that's made up out of whole cloth. And then on top of that, having members refusing to disarm themselves before entering the chamber, refusing to go through metal detectors. There's definitely a culture of distrust on Capitol Hill. And I think that it's very hard for Republicans to say this is an overreaction, considering that that those members are still in Congress, and also considering what happened on January 6th.
You know, so on the other side, Dan, you know, you've got the Republican Party. You know, I've been using the word, it's cannibalism, right? Matt Gaetz travels across the country to tell people in Wyoming to vote against the third-ranking Republican in the House, Liz Cheney, because she didn't say the election was rigged, and she voted to impeach the president for his role in the insurrection. You have that going on. Kevin McCarthy said, stop the crap, the infighting, but isn't doing anything about it because he was down meeting with Trump today and getting his endorsement.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things going on. You know, first of all, I think what's going on with Congressman Greene is absolutely crazy, and I think it's kind of outside the bounds of what a responsible member should be saying. And I think that the party should look at doing what they did to Steve King and strip her of committee assignments to try to really just send a strong message that this is completely outside the mainstream. What's happening with Liz Cheney, I think, is completely different. Congressman Gaetz is grandstanding and trying to, you know, come up with some kind of purity test. I don't think this is how the Republicans get back in the majority. I don't think this is how we should be wandering out around the wilderness the next 2 years or 4 years. And I think that Liz Cheney, you know, should be up for, you know, if there was an additional one of John F. Kennedy's Profiling Courage, a second book, I think she's earned herself a chapter in that book for speaking her mind. Look, she's a clear-cut, common-sense conservative with a long, tremendous background. I think she voted her conscience here. I think she thought what Trump did was abominable, as I did, and she stood up for it. To remove her from a leadership position is reactive and not helpful for getting the party the majority. Then with what's going on with McCarthy visiting Trump tonight or today, I think that just shows that McCarthy wants to be speaker, and he realizes he can't be speaker if Trump supports, you know, uses his $200 million bank account, his megaphone, or what's left of it, without the Twitter account, to support anti-establishment people that have wronged him, and to take a list of grievances and go after 20 or 30 congressmen simultaneously and hold rallies and use his name and his money against incumbents. That is the exact opposite of what Kevin McCarthy needs if he wants to be speaker. I mean, which is incredible. It's all you know, it's all personal political machinations going on, with the exception of Liz Cheney, clearly, Abby, with the examples that Dan's going through here. But what about this point, Abby? You know, with Steve King, they stripped him of his assignments. They effectively neutered him. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Kevin McCarthy put her on committees, right? Like a day ago.
It's quite the opposite. And, you know, what is really happening here is that Kevin McCarthy is demonstrating in multiple ways that he believes that where the wind is blowing politically for him is aligned not just with Trump, but also with the fringe that is now a part of his conference in the Republican House, that he is obviously afraid of reprimanding Marjorie Taylor Greene in a real way, because he understands on some level that some percentage of the Republican base backs her up, believes some of the things that she believes, whether it's QAnon or some of the other conspiracy theories. That's the scary part about what's going on here. And it is something that I think many Republicans are not willing to acknowledge. But if you look at the poll numbers and you look at the way in which Republican voters, about 75% of them, believe this election was stolen, that is a Republican Party that is completely outside of the realm of reality, and its leaders have absolutely no ability to get things back on track.
Right, and you know what? It's funny. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
If I could interject for a second, I agree with her, but I think it's even more simple than that. What's going on by McCarthy visiting Trump is clearly a case of Trump has unleashed his own inner demons at the expense of the Republican Party, and like we were in Georgia with him making the call to the Secretary of State and him calling on about election fraud in Georgia and it costing us those Senate seats. This is clearly McCarthy is on defense here, and instead of being on offense against the Biden administration, trying to hold the Biden administration accountable, Trump has basically chosen himself over the party, and it's causing both McConnell with this impending trial in the Senate, and McCarthy by visiting him and having to deal with Green to both be on defense at a time when we should be focused on the Biden nominees as Republicans and focused on trying to hold Biden accountable for what I think are, some ill-advised economic policies. And the Republican leadership clearly can't do that. They are focused on defense right now.
Well, and they're focused still on it also comes back to this questioning the election itself, right? I mean, there's, I call it the Trump GOP and the other GOP. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but that's what you're dealing with, Dan. I mean,
it's a civil war.
Yeah, it is. And Abby, let me ask you about this whole cancel culture thing. And I think there's people across the political spectrum who are have issues with cancel culture and what it's done to conversation. But it's very interesting. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, he voted, of course, to impeach Trump with Liz Cheney. He responded to some of Gates' attacks on Cheney recently, saying this is GOP cancel culture. And I just played Gates, railing on cancel culture, how terrible it is. And you guys remember, Trump used to love this whole cancel culture beat. Remember this?
If you disagree with them, they try to humiliate you, smear you, and cancel you. Cancel culture, right? A vote for Biden is a vote to give control of government over to the globalists and the communists, socialists, and wealthy liberal hypocrites who want to silence, cancel, and punish you. Cancel culture, they call it. The efforts to censor, cancel, and blacklist our fellow citizens are wrong, and they are dangerous.
Oh, Republican congressman said that what they're doing now is cancel culture. That's exactly what they're doing, Abby, right? If you weren't doing exactly what we wanted, get out.
This is clearly not the big tent, some kind of big tent Republican Party that President Trump specifically wants. He wants people who support him and back him up. It really has absolutely nothing to do with ideology, but that's the reality that Republicans are living in. He's concerned about being canceled from social media if he spreads falsehoods, but in reality, the Republican Party of today, in Trump's mind, should be lockstep with him, and everyone else who disagrees needs to be kicked out or pushed out, and that is what we are seeing with Liz Cheney and with the 10 other Republicans who voted for impeachment, who are getting an enormous amount of backlash on social back in their districts right now.
Yeah, well, they're going
Trump wants the smaller Republican Party that's more loyal to him, and unfortunately, as a Republican, that's not what I want to see right now. We need a bigger tent. And we need to be thinking about how we can win the midterms in 2022 and potentially win the White House in 2024. Right. And Trump's actions are cutting against that. And I just think a lot of Republican voters haven't quite figured that out yet.
No, well, as you know, as we point out, right, Republicans overall 25, 26-ish% of the overall population. You point out that number is going to get smaller and smaller. It's not going to help people like you. All right. Thank you both very much. I appreciate your time.